Welcome. This is the Hustings for Police and Crimes Commissioner. Now, actually, we had Hustings on Monday, and the trick question, not the trick question, the question was, anybody going to eat one of the Hustings? You know, the whole electoral result will be confusing at the answer.
Yeah, that's it.
You realise this?
We all failed and we all lost.
You realise? Okay. Well, Old Norse is house, and what is it? House and thing, isn't it? It's like house thing, an assembly, something like that. Who's king? It's like to do with assembly called by leaders. So yeah, anyway, that's completely relevant. It's my question. So in this Hustings, Police and Crimes Commissioner, going back, we know what Hustings is, we know what this Hustings is for. We have Katy Grant, Benet Allen, Clare, Moody, and Mark Shelford. In terms of Police and Crimes Commissioner, Mark, you should know, is a defending champion, and all the rest challenges in his current position. So we can start with like a little 5-minute introduction on, or you can lay out your stall and tell us why you either do this job, what you're going to do this job, why you want to do this job. Is that fair to say? So can we start, please, Katy, tell us your party that you're representing, and tell us, please, a little manifesto outline for your party for this role, please. Sorry, Katy.
Yeah. You've got mics on your
Oh, yeah.
please use the mics for the benefit of the people at home. And you can pass one on. Yeah, if you don't hear yourself on the speakers, it's okay. They are hearing you more.
It's more online.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody online cool with that? You right? You watching the chat?
Yeah, all good.
Good, thank you. All right, so, Katy, sorry, I called you first.
That's fine, that's fine.
What do you do this job?
Well, I'll start with an intro about me generally, and we'll get to that. Thank you, Rob. So, hi everyone, my name is Katy Grant. I'm deep with the Green Party, a known entity of the party here in Bristol. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm currently a city councillor here in Bristol, and I'm also a family court magistrate on the Avon and Sunset bench. So those are two things I'm doing at the moment that are, well, on the one hand bringing me into lots of contact with the community, and on the other bringing me into lots of contact with the criminal justice system. Before that, I've been at that for a few years. I actually lived overseas for about 22 years, almost exclusively in environments of sort of conflict and humanitarian emergency. I work with the UN and with a range of other organisations, UNICEF and UNHCR in particular, so I was focused very much on refugee rights, on violence against women and children, and on child protection. So, in that context, I've worked alongside a range of governments, obviously loads of different communities, and with police forces. So I do understand what a functioning, agile, robust police force looks like and what it does not look like. And I think we have much to be grateful for in this country and in this region, which is not to say that there is not a lot of work to be done to ever increase levels of efficiency and of proximity with community priorities. So in terms of my manifesto, I am interested in a few things I'll describe now, and this is all sort of online as well. And the first of these is tackling crime very much from a prevention point of view. Greens generally, and I am super interested in working with community, schools, youth service providers, families themselves to tackle crime, especially violent crime and knife crime, but very much from a structural and societal point of view, looking at how it all starts in the first place and what causes people to end up perpetrating this sort of crime. I, as Commissioner, would like to see trusted, visible, known neighbourhood police officers participating in community-wide action that will provide young people with alternatives to crime in the first place. I see a role for police at all levels of this. Playing a role in schools, making the work of the police to children from a young age, and joining in with sort of resilience building and service provision and outreach, particularly in communities that need it most. I would like to see the police offering strengthened victim services. Victim services is the commissioning area, so that's something that can be done by the police commissioner, and to make sure the police have a more constant and reassuring presence in communities in the aftermath of crime. especially crime, of the sort we've just been discussing. I would really like to see dramatically improved results in the prosecution of sexual violence, violence against women and children, including domestic violence and assault. I think we need systems to deliver this and the metrics to demonstrate it so that women and girls in urban environments all over this region, but also everywhere, feel safe in their homes and feel safe in the streets. This would involve some degree of specialist outreach to prevent child exploitation and abuse. I would like to tackle in the rural areas the county lines and the misuse and criminal supply of drugs, strengthen policing around that and around the violence that comes from it. I would like to have the police play a central role in the Vision Zero campaign to reduce, if not eliminate, traffic fatalities on our roads, and that very much includes the streets of Bristol and rural streets as well. That would link very much with work I've been doing as a councillor around school streets, speed limits and street safety generally. And finally, I really want to look at standards in the police force performance and addressing the sorts of entrenched performance and prejudice issues we all know very well continue to exist. We've had recent reasons to understand quite a bit more about this in the Catch a Proper Fellows series, which looked at a range of different problems. And obviously work is being done on this, but I think there are significant other steps to be taken, and I think we can both take a long-term view on it, but also accelerate it. I just think this is something that can be shifted. So I would be very keen on working very closely with the Chief Constable on measuring that sort of thing within the force itself. I've been told I have only 30 seconds left. I reckon I will call it a day. Just to say finally, I'm ferociously keen and interested in and passionate about representing community. I know how to talk to communities and to reflect community voices. I've been doing that for these, recent years as a councillor, so that is something I hope I will very visibly bring to the job.
Thank you, Katy. Katy Grant, Green Party. Benet.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Katy, as well. We've all got the same wish list. We're going to hear exactly the same wish list 4 times if we're not very careful. It's going to start to get a little bit repetitive. I'm going to try to focus on what makes the Liberal Democrats different, and hopefully we'll move on to have a fairly interesting discussion about what institutional racism is all about. But first, a little bit about me. I'm Benet from sunny Minehead. Do come and visit sometime. We need your business. It's not all that far, only a couple of hours away.
Got buttons there?
And it's got Butlins, Butlins and the beach and the hillside. What more could you ask? I've joined the Liberal Democrats several years ago. I've been a local councillor for much of the time since I joined. I was deputy leader of a council called Somerset West and Taunton. That was abolished, unfortunately, by the Conservative government a couple of years ago, and all of the district councils, some of which were doing quite successfully, given that there was no money, have all been folded into Somerset Council, where there is equally no money. No money is going to be a recurring theme, I think, tonight, and how we make the best of not having any funds. There's a lot to be said. There's also got a lot to be said about how the police force came to be how it is today, but we'll come on to that later on. In my time as a local councillor at Somerset West and Taunton, I built the first council houses in all of West Somerset for more than a generation. For 30 years, we hadn't had any proper social rented housing. Now we've got, thanks to my council, we've got 64 council houses in Minehead at proper council rents. And that tackles head-on one of the problems which leads to crime, which is a lack of opportunity and social deprivation. Both of those things are causes of crime. And what I think you're going to hear from me is a much more emphasis on prevention rather than tearing up on S. We're on the back foot at the moment. We're actually literally mopping up the blood from the streets. This is something that we used to call firefighting, but it's actually even worse than that. We're deploying the police as best we can, and I will give the current commissioner some credit for doing his best to do this, because he's on the back foot as well. But I'm afraid it's his government and his party that does have a major part in bringing us to this situation. And it is very much time for change in the police to make the whole force work better. It's much cheaper to do prevention than it is to clear up a mess. It's much cheaper to put an officer into a school, and 10 minutes spent in a classroom talking to the kids has a huge effect, which makes kids realise that they are part of a broader society, and that the police are actually just normal human beings like us. And they work with our consent, and without the consent of the people, the police don't work properly. And this is another area where the police begin to lose trust and they begin to lose respect, where we have a big problem. Also, the police not being visible is something that we need to tackle head on. I've knocked on an awful lot of doors over the last few months, and the thing I hear most is, where are the police? You just don't see them. And making the police visible is definitely part of my priority. There's a policy called broken windows, where you aim to mop up the small crimes before they turn into bigger issues. And you catch the kids younger before they grow up and turn into criminals. And with a bit of luck, you can catch the kids younger and make them feel like they're part of a society where they're respected and trusted, and they don't need to carry knives. I imagine that that's going to form a fairly major part of tonight's discussion as well. So these are our biggest priorities and the things that we have to tackle. You're probably going to hear various promises from various parties tonight. I'm not going to promise particular numbers or to spend particular pounds here or particular pounds there. Why? Because there is no money. Everybody knows that there is no money. What we've got to do is make the best of the resources that we've got. The current situation is that the police force has been hollowed out over an extended period by this government. And we're all begging for change. We need change so much that we're crying out for proper management, we're crying out for continuity, and we're also crying out for a much more organised and measured approach to how we do policing, to making sure that the police are tackling the things that really matter. Not just now, but for the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Benet. Benet, the Liberal Democrat candidate. Clare.
Thank you. Yep, I am Clare Moody, and I am the Labour Party's candidate for the Police and Crime Commissioner role. I will, following Katy and Bennett's example, I will tell you a little bit about myself and what's brought me to this role, and then I want to talk to you about my agenda and how I want to work with the Black South West Network and others in delivering in the role of PCC, if I were fortunate enough to be elected. I have a background. In my background, I have already represented this area. I was formerly a member of the European Parliament. When I sat in the European Parliament, I was on the Equality Committee and did work through that and through other parts of the work that I did. I was also on the Budget Committee, which gave me a strategic oversight of large budgets and how you manage them. And I was Vice Chair of the Security and Defence Committee, which meant part of that was involved in working with Europol as well. I also have worked in the heart of government. I worked in number 10 with Gordon Brown from 2008 to 2010. And again, that gives you a strategic political oversight. And it also teaches you how to get things done, how to make things happen in government. In addition, I spent 20 years in the trade union movement, which was a role that was about representing people, and it was about standing up for people, and it was about getting results for people as well. It was a role of service, and it's one I'm very, very proud to have had. And finally, my current role is co-chief exec of an equality and a human rights charity. And that brings the values, that demonstrates the values that I bring to my candidacy and I would bring to the role if I were elected. So, what as a PCC do we need to respond to, would I need to respond to if I were elected? And there's clearly a problem. There is a problem of trust in the police, and there's a problem with the experience of policing, and that applies particularly to some of our communities. And it is one around relationship to inequality. We know that people who experience crime are those people that are most likely to live in most deprived communities. And we know, for example, that Bristol, I think, is 7th in the country for the experience of inequality as a city, in education, in housing, in health, in other areas. So we have to respond to that and recognise that reality, and recognise that that means that there has to be a different response from the police as well around engagement and responding to that need. We've seen, and others have talked about this, the fact that that we've had a hollowed out public sector. It's happened to the police, resources in the police, but we've seen it with youth services, all these things that go to prevent crime, that all go to support communities. We've got to work in that cross public sector way. But we also have to restore neighbourhood policing. We have to bring policing into our communities. The communities don't police, the police don't, they aren't policing at communities, they are policing with and from within communities. So that really, really matters. You've got to pay attention to the data, and that's that around particular policy outcomes, like stop and search. We've had some very welcome changes to scrutiny. We've got, for example, the Independent Scrutiny Board. We've got the work that ISOP does, individuals like Desmond Brown. We've got to follow that data, respond to that data, and act on that data to deliver change as a consequence of the policing, of the way that policing is done. We also really seriously have to look at the makeup of the Avon and Somerset police force. It is not representative of the communities that the police are there to serve, and that has to change. There is some astonishing data on that. And finally, the role of the PCC is the role to link with communities. The PCC needs to be accountable to you. And that is what I would do if I were elected. It would be continual engagement with you as your elected representative and answerable to you, as I have been in many other roles, for the delivery of the Police and Crime Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that's Clare's stall, Clare Moody, Labour Party. And finally, Mark, incumbent, of course.
Thank you very much. So my background was I was a soldier for 32 years. I served all over the world, and I had a very good understanding of what good and bad policing looks like from the sharp end. And by living in different communities, I got a good understanding of different cultures and communities and their needs and the issues that many of them will have, which has been extremely useful in this job. I've also run my own company, and I've been a local politician and a deputy leader in Barton, which is Somerset. So some of the achievements we've done in the last 3 years, we've had a 300% increase in the rate of rape charges going to court. And that's under the very courageous Chief Constable, Sarah Drew, which you can come back to. She and I sat down right at the beginning of our time together and looked at the things that we needed to change, culture and leadership. And we've made a big change. One of those things was about transparency. And you saw that playing out on the Channel 4 programme, Catch a Copper. It's all about being transparent and listening to the communities. You will know that my office commissioned and published a report by Desmond Brown on identifying disproportionality in the criminal justice service. It made some 83 recommendations, of which 60% sat with the police, but the remaining part sat with the remainder of the criminal justice service. And those are the people who are trying to hurry up and get on with it, because the police have largely either completed all those recommendations or certainly started and all. We listened to the communities, and the police have developed a race action plan, an anti-racism strategy, which has been launched. And you will know that Chief Constable had my full support when she declared institutional racism in June of last year. Chief Inspector Vicky Hayward-Nathan has redrafted the Stop and Search. working with the young of the community to really understand that. Separately, Assistant Chief Counsel Will White has had financial support from my office to initiate a pilot programme called Third Prosecution, and that is being piloted in Bristol. The tenders for this work are now closed, and it's very exciting once we work that shortly. One of the points was made is about work to recruit, train, and to retain police and staff drawn from black and minority communities within Bristol and England also. One of the things I discovered, we pushed it, we worked really hard, both between my office and the constabulary office, and we couldn't quite understand why so many black candidates were failing their vetting. It transpired they were failing their vetting because they didn't have driving licenses. So I said, well, hang on a second, if they're going to pass for every other reason, why don't we give them driving courses and then get them in? So we're rolling out an example. It's a simple, practical thing where a system had got it wrong. One of the things I'm most proud about is the reoffending programme. So it was Prisoners Building Homes programme, which has happened. And the first 6 of these pods are going to land in Bristol and be erected by the 29th of this month. And this programme provides skill training for prisoners to improve their employability when they leave on release. And it also produces affordable, low-energy homes, which is very exciting. It's why Bristol Council is so keen on the programme. So to my ambitions of the future, my manifesto is there. Please read it, it's on the website. So I'm just going to talk about one of the things which is about prevention. And this is working on the terrible issue of night crime with our young. We're taking a public health approach to this. The constabulary are dealing with the symptoms of the problem, and my office is working with councils and the mayor looking at the underlying causes of this, and we've invested hugely in this. It is the single most important thing in the manifesto. It's the single most important thing of the community, and it's something that we are working on and involved in. And that is it. Trust me on my results, which I have produced, rather than what people might say.
Thank you very much, Mark. So I'd like to ask them, it's a technical question for prevention. Can we start with you, Mark? I don't know if this is a question from the other candidates because they're on the job. But my question is, welcome. No, don't be sorry, welcome for coming. You missed the introductions, that's it. But you will get a sense of the profile of these people very short. You won't get a profile of these people. So, what's it realistically possible to do in this role? So could you just explain structurally, and your understanding of it as well, we're not in the role, but clearly starting with someone who's in the role, what's it realistically possible to do? Just explain structurally how you relate to the actual police force. Is that a fair question? Because I don't really understand it.
So structurally, I scrutinise the police force on the delivery of the police and crime plan. The police and crime plan is a statutory document that I drafted and wrote, going out to the communities as a candidate, as they will be doing now, talking on the doorstep, finding out what really concerns them.
Sorry to interrupt you. So you wrote it pre-election?
Yeah, well, it's my manifesto.
So it's your plan, it's your manifesto. So each of you will have a plan.
Confirmed, and that turned into a police and crime plan, which is the statutory document which the Chief Constable has to deliver. And I scrutinise the Chief Constable on the delivery of that plan.
Thank you. Claire, would you like to have a go answering that question? Either what you think it is or what you can be.
Yeah, so just picking up on the point that Mark made, and the first thing you have to do structurally, if elected as a police and crime commissioner, is you have until the following April to write that police and crime plan, and that sets the strategic priorities for the force. So it is actually
4 years.
huge.
Is it a 4-year role?
Yeah, it's a 4-year role, so Mark's only had 3 because of the pandemic, and then this was due for 4. That then sets those strategic goals for the police, and it is then something you can be, you as a police and crime commissioner can be held accountable for making sure that the force implement what are the strategic priorities set out for the force in that plan. And it would be, my 5 priorities, if you like, which would somehow go into that plan around prioritising neighbourhood policing back in neighbourhoods. You've got reducing violent crime, particularly night crime and violence against women and girls. But a prevention, a world of prevention that you can sort of work into with the commissioning part of the Police and Crime Commissioner titles. And then you've got victim support, which is really, really important. And then again, the point of policing standards. So all of those you put into the strategy. You hold the Chief Constable account for that strategy. Some of it you're directly responsible for as a Police and Crime Commissioner. So there is a massive thing you can do. But in addition to that hardware, you've got soft power, because you've got a convening. You have the ability to pull people together. And that's really important, particularly when you've got the public sector under such stress, of pulling people together so that they can collaborate, prevention or in solving problems, and that's how you can do that role effectively.
Thank you. Benet and Katy.
Thank you very much. Yes, as your Police and Crime Commissioner, I will be inheriting an office with 31 full-time equivalent staff, which costs the taxpayer, that's you and me and all of us, £2.4 million a year to run.
For the whole of England.
It's quite a lot of money, isn't it, just to oversee the police, when we already have police and crime panels, which is the way it used to be done, run by local councils, so we're already giving police political direction. So, is the office of PCC really necessary? The Liberal Democrats are the only party who believe that actually it isn't. And there are things that can be done, like scaling the office back and preparing to hand control back to local councils. There are things that can be done, like saving quite a lot of money in the process and maybe putting more officers on the streets, which is what we would like to see. So it's going to be an interesting one if you vote for me as your PCC, because there'll be a smaller role for the PCC next time around.
Okay, thank you. So Katy, so structurally, what can you do? What's it possible to do? What might you do?
Yeah, thanks. Well, lots has been said. I don't take Benet's precise line to the role of PCC, but I too have spoken quite a bit with the team about how that team makes itself accountable onwards, and I think we will absolutely need to keep making sure that the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner is adding value, because it does cost money, and I think that needs to be demonstrated to the public, and the work of it needs to be better understood and visible. But I mean, it is clear that the Police and Crime Commissioner cannot meddle in operational policing. That is led by the Chief Constable, and we are not there to do that. But it is absolutely, and I think this is where the value lies, it is the role of the Police and Crime Commissioner as an elected person to stand up for the views and ideas and input of communities and the public at large. Obviously not just those who voted for them, but for all. Now in everyone's Somerset, that's quite a range of different peoples, because it's a big area. You've got intensely rural areas in the mix, and then you've got a big city like Bristol, and other cities as well. But so I think the Commissioner just has to have his or her ears to the ground all the time, out there speaking with groups, with the council, a range of other partners, and bringing all that to bear in the work of the police, and really holding that entire to account if it's not delivered. The Commissioner in herself is also then scrutinised by something called the Police and Crime Panel, which is councillors and others. So there is an onward accountability, but it really is that story of representing everybody else.
Okay, thank you. Starting with, I don't know, which way should we go? 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. Should we go 3, 2, 4, 1, just for fun? So starting with Clare, then Benet, then Mark, then Katy. You've all seen the film Minority Report? Have you seen the film Minority Report? Tom Cruise, you seen that film?
Yeah. It's too young.
Police are working with 400 consultants on a project using AI to develop predictive policing, whereby the profiles of random suspected parties are expect them to work out the possible criminality purely using electronic techniques to determine guilt. It's actually a little bit more complex than that, but it's about mapping crime, but also predicting individuals' potentiality for crime, right? So, what are the candidates doing? You talk about prevention. So So do you favour further use of this technique, and what do you think the issues might be around this technique? Starting with Clare.
Well, the issues are very well known and very well documented around this, around AI and disproportionality within AI. You've got to. There's a whole world of technology around this that you've got to open up what's inside the black box, if you like, with AI. And you have. I am nervous around the use of AI.
But there's no stopping it, though, is there?
The AI is very useful. AI can be very useful for various things. AI is extraordinarily useful. We all of us use AI in our lives right now as well. But when it comes to that minority report type situation, then you've got to be, I mean, cautious is not the word, you have got to be really aware of what happens.
At PCC, how does that work for you?
So I'm in favour of using technology in policing. There's a whole load of stuff you can do around getting charge rates up because you use what's on people's phones, for example, and the data that's on the charge, the accused's phone, rather than say focusing on the accused rather than the victim. But the AI stuff is the AI learning, the automatic learning is, again, I'm not saying you wouldn't use AI, it's just that minority thing, the minority report, where you are identifying perpetrators,
Or potential
perpetrators, exactly that, and what's the bias that's being built into that algorithm, that AI, and then is reinforced, because that's the point of AI, is it's generative learning. And if it reinforces the bias as well, you've just got to step back and not use it. I wouldn't use it.
Although I'm not sure as PCC you have much power in saying that, but let's not extend your going. Sorry.
That's the oversight point.
Right.
Because that is, if there's disproportionate impact, then you have the right to ask those questions. And if those questions say there is an unfair impact, then I think you do have to ask, well, why are you continuing with that?
Right. ChatGPT says So, Benet, predictive policing, AI, you've all mentioned prevention, predictive policing, AI,
Well,
etc.
in as much as it helps with prevention, AI is a marvellous tool, but we're not going to be using AI to come up with a guilty verdict, because that is fundamentally not transparent, nor is it trustworthy. It's not going to turn out like Minority Report, even though it's quite likely, it has already proved useful in the United States, to work out where crimes are likely to happen and where trouble is likely to go to next. That's one thing, that's prevention, but trust me, it won't be Minority Report.
Thank you. You can come back to you, or you can save your point. I think we have fair,
I will want to come back on some of that.
So it's clearly a useful tool. AI gives you the ability to crunch a lot of data very quickly, and it looks at risk factors, which is incredibly helpful, particularly, let's take missing children. To anticipate when children go missing and their risk factors can be processed by AI. And there's a whole raft of things, ACEs they've experienced during their life, so adverse childhood experiences. All of those go compiled. So it's a useful tool, but it has to be scrutinised. And part of my job is to make sure that scrutiny is done correctly. So the first element is I will get a brief of something new that's coming in, new technology. I want to know the unintended consequences of the technology, the cost, the risk factors, etc., the likelihood of success when it comes in. And then I want to make sure there's a correct scrutiny panel that will also oversee it independently of me and my office. And for example, the independent panel on police powers will look at this sort of thing. One of the things I'd love to talk about, which is not AI, but facial recognition, later, is something that, again, is something that made huge differences. And for example, the Co-op on our using it in a lot of their stores, and the difference is huge.
Thank you.
Why don't they use
I
that?
mean,
Mike, they never use
I
that.
think this will be something that will be handled with extreme care in an area such as policing. I think there are all manner of ways in which AI will be useful that are nearly so morally or sort of personally complex. And I do think that AI will play a role for the Office of the Commissioner and policing generally, in saving time and saving budget. I talked to the team a bit about this. I mean, there are plenty of innocent ways that you can deploy technology to look through CCTV 10 times faster than 10 officers can, or look for registration numbers in a sort of, in a way that can then flag up in 24 hours of footage where we need to be looking. But I would be extremely cautious about deploying in anything that's around sort of predictive culpability, and as Mark said, I cannot picture that you would ever do anything other than have it be rolled out for quite a while with a sort of human control, if you know, with a human comparator, and under the surveillance and sort of scrutiny of deeply tech people who know what they're doing. So I think it is possible to take artificial intelligence and all the best that it has to offer step by step, but you would just have a million checks and balances in place.
Thank you. Anybody formulating questions at this stage? Okay. Okay. Any more? Any more questions? Any more questions online? Any questions online, Sid?
Jeff?
No. Yeah.
No.
No questions online. Okay. So I'll come back to any of those questions. I think your hand is up.
2 seconds.
Oh yeah, sorry, Mike. You want this one?
Yeah.
I've got a question.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that it's interesting as an AI one, because most of you talked about, I like the fact that some of you talked about housing and recognising poverty as a driver towards crime. So yeah, if not, when you start getting into particular crimes, you might as well just map out all places and just carve that map, isn't it? Because it could get to that, couldn't it? So I'm glad you all mentioned something that had preventive social impact, which I guess is what police can't really do. So I guess PCC does have the potential spread of play with those things. That would be just really time.
I'd like to do a little bit of a rewind. So first of all, thank you very much for attending. And secondly, I'm very concerned about the language that you are all using. Clare was doing very, very well and then dropped into the same language. You guys are going for the role to work with a police service and not a police force. And this country has gone through great lengths to ensure that we have a police service. So the police is not above the citizen and is accountable to the citizen. And every single one of you, so disappointingly, referred to a police force, and it's actually broken my heart. It's made me very upset. I'd like all of you now to take a moment of reflection and I guess repitch how you're going to be working with our police service.
Thank you. Can we save that in terms of ongoing conversation? Thank you very much. Who else was there?
How will you hold police officer accountable for any instance of misconduct or abuse of power, particularly when it involves interactions with members of the BME community?
So, how would we hold them accountable for misconduct, in particularly relation to BME? Okay, thank you very much. Don't be careful that language to BME, but anyway, let's use it for now. That's a question, eh?
Yeah, that's questions on mine actually is asking a question here. I mean, the last couple of months we've seen an influx or an increase of knife crime within our community, and especially the Vietnamese. And none of them actually, only apart from Marco's mention about it, none of them have done anything about it or said anything about it. What are your plans of tackling this epidemic or pandemic, as you said, and the fact that you want to implement a health approach kind of system to tackle it? What have you done? Because this has happened in the last couple of months, and you being the current office holder, what are your plans? What does your report entail when it comes to tackling life crime, and especially when it comes to
Okay, thank you. One more question.
Online.
Sorry?
Go one line.
Should we take one online first?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
One online first, just to make me feel like it is.
So, Clare had asked, how do the candidates plan to monitor and address the school-to-prison pipeline, particularly in the area?
Okay, that's a good one, because actually we've all talked about schools, haven't you, somewhere? So we'll take one more question. Mira.
Okay, so, yeah.
Council, I should say councillor.
Okay, so Councillor Cole, yes, you will hear. So I've got a question which one of the residents have asked me to ask, and it's to do with, it's to do with community policing. And she said, I wanted to ask just how much commitment that you're going to make to community policing on a scale from 1 to 10, because their presence over the years has not been very positive.
Is it possible to put down what its current metric on it? What would you say? What would you say? 1, 2, minus 1?
I don't know, because it's not my question.
All right.
So actually, I've asked, somebody's actually texted me and asked me to ask that question.
All right,
I do have a question for myself.
Please do,
go.
And
it's to do with our young men and how they're treated within the criminal justice system, and it's very clear that they are treated differently, and the chances of them being locked up and getting longer sentences are very much higher than their counterparts, So what would you do in your role to address this?
Okay, thank you. Now, I made a little bit of a bit of a flying whistle. We've got loads of questions. They each will be asking about 6 million questions. So what we'll do, let's take it one theme at a time, if we can, yeah? To make it easier for you to answer in rounds. So let's start with, so the police service versus force was an observation and something to maybe accommodate as we go forward. And let's see if anyone would comment on that further. But the other question, the question was about accountability. How do you ensure the accountability of officers, particularly in relation to injustice against BME, although it probably doesn't really matter really, does it? I guess we're in the BME kind of setting here. But in accountability, justice, or maybe it does matter, because maybe maybe it's not seen the same way. But let's keep the BME in. How do you deal with accountability and injustice?
Shall I start? Do you want to start?
Why not?
So you'll know we commissioned in the disproportionality report by the Brown. We made those 6, we made 83 recommendations, 60,000 police. Part of that was that injustice, part of that was trying to change that. So from the point of view of accountability, making sure that those are flagged up, and we talked about the independent police powers panel recently. They look at all of those instances where the police have used power, and they cherry pick out the ones every quarter, those particular ones, and particularly if there's been a complaint raised. But beyond that, there's the systemic change within the force that we put in, that cultural change, making sure that race matters has been rolled out across the whole of the force. I'll come back to your question on that, because I believe it's a force that delivers a service. It's a chain of command. It wears a uniform. It has force that it can deploy, but it must serve the community. So I take it a different way to you. So when that leadership piece has come in to change the culture and make sure that people internally recognise what they're doing, it's really important to explain to people when they are stopping and searching, for example, why they're doing it. What's the intelligence that has led them to do so? It's not just a gut feel, I don't like looking at them, it's because they've been told somebody who looks like this, with these clothes on, this has happened, they're in this area, then we need to stop and search anybody who looks like that in order to be able to do that. That's very carefully controlled, except for immediately after the stabbing of the boys. As you know, Section 60 was initiated, which loosened that to allow the police to stop and search more. What was really interesting, they did a lot of stop and search in those areas. Not one knife was found. And they had done all that pre-work. They'd gone out and they'd spoken to the communities. The community liaison officers have been out there, the community police forces have been out there, talking to the community, saying, Section 6 is about communication. This, make sure everybody understands, make sure everybody knows. And it worked. It worked. For that period of time, it worked. It was very good. So it can work.
Do they also warn people, put it in a nice way?
Yes. But that in itself achieves an aim.
True.
It gets people to think about it. And it meant that there were no reprisals, there were no other things that went on. It's a really difficult question. And it's one that I'd like to explore later on.
Okay, thank you. Who's next? Whoever wants to go next. Yeah.
Are we tackling all the questions?
No, we're looking at, well, you can look at the forced service one, because that's kind of ongoing, but accountability of officers for their actions within the BME community. I don't like that language either, but anyone needs it. BME community.
Well, yes, and we're one of the very few forces or services to be. I hope we're going to be a force for change and a force for good, like somebody could be a force for nature. It's not necessarily a scary thing, it's just that we're all moving in the same direction. We're all trying to achieve the best outcome for the community. The police has to be part of the community, and the community has to be part of the police. And without your trust and without respect for moving in both directions, it's not going to work. Because, quite simply, there are more of you than there are of the police, and the police have to function as part of the community. Disciplinary action and racist issues. We are one of the few services to have been declared as institutionally racist. I look forward to the day, should that be possible, when we're no longer institutionally racist, when we've actually implemented enough training, and we've also looked at it, we've monitored our own behaviour long enough, that we might strive one day to not be an institutionally racist police force. But we are where we are at the moment, and it's not a pretty sight. The force is 97% white, and here in Bristol we're dealing with a population which is 26-27% black. So the police on the streets have looked radically different to the people that they're policing, and that in itself is not a good thing. We do already strive to recruit black and minority ethnic faces wherever we can. We try to look like the people that we're serving, and we do serve them, trust me. But the problem we've got at the moment seems to be a recruitment problem, there seems to be a retention problem, that once we've got those people in the force, they tend to leave this service, if you like, but they tend to leave quite soon, faster than white people. So we end up reinforcing an overwhelmingly white police service. Out in the countryside, because this patch covers all of rural Somerset as well, the racial makeup is completely different. It's practically 97% wheat. Out in the countryside, we don't have that problem, but we do have the problem here in the cities. We need to redouble our efforts to make sure that we're getting things right. Being black does not make you a criminal. That's one of the most crucial things I need to say. The other one is that poverty does make you into a criminal, and poverty is one of the things that we need to work on. And although I can't do this directly, I have a track record of working in local councils and meeting people who have had the misfortune to have a bad start in life and to know what to do to go about fixing these problems. We need to end deprivation, we need to have a whole political programme. That's one of the reasons why I'm asking you to vote for somebody with Liberal Democrat values, because the values that my colleagues present on local government and in national government are the same as the values you're going to get here. Thank you.
Thank you, Benet. Katy?
Yes, super interesting range of questions. On the
It's around the accountability is mainly
no, I'm definitely
and
listening
force
to that
as well.
one. Yeah. I mean, I don't have a huge amount left out on the debate of force service. I really apologise if that was upsetting for you. I do believe no one here meant it in a sense of, force, strength, coercion. That is the phrase used about the police force in the area, and I think, and like it is about force and all the rest. Definitely, the police are operating the role of public service. The police cannot police without consent, and that brings us to this main question that's been asked about misconduct and accountability. The Desmond Brown report, commissioned in 2019. Many of the recommendations have now been put into practice. Obviously disproportionality was just highlighted in the Edinburgh Somerset area at police and how much needs to be addressed. Shocking low levels of representation of black and minoritized officers at senior levels within the force. 24% greater likelihood of getting a prison sentence for those offences if you're from a black or minority group individual. And for me, kind of essentially the most important thing really is this story of just broken trust and confidence amongst certain communities in the police. And I think there is a lot that's been done mechanically and operationally to address this. But if I was commissioner, I would also have my eyes on something much harder to measure, which is the actual profound culture in our society, honestly, but in the police, that is, even without meaning to, subconsciously, institutionally prejudiced. And I think we need a lot of work done with police, especially this enormous number of new police officers who've been brought on since the police uplift, who are still in training and who in some ways represent a real opportunity to change that culture. To have them really understand what anti-racism means and to have them say, here and over in the Somerset, we just do these things differently. I think Councillor Cole's question isn't irrelevant to this either. I mean, that's obviously about uneven sentencing and prejudice. Yeah, within the wider criminal justice system. So obviously, the police can't, play a role beyond. But I think the police can lead in this sort of significant cultural change. And I think building up new levels of relationship with the police is just crucial to all of this, which is why we need more police officers participating in a trusted and appreciated way in a range of other activities being provided by other service providers, not just by the police.
Yes.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you. Yeah. Firstly, thank you for the challenge on language. I think that's a really important thing to hear and to take on board. It's a word we've used as shorthand to describe the police, and actually, you are right, it's there as a service. It is there to be of the community for the community, and I'm absorbing your comment and working out use of language going forward. In terms of the accountability point, I think we were asked specifically about individual officers and accountability, and I think that isn't, I may be wrong about that, but it's very clear the Police and Crime Commissioner shouldn't be getting involved in individual cases because we are not an operational function, or whoever is in that post is not operational. But it goes to the point about what Sarah Crew has acknowledged, which is the institutional racism within the force, and therefore the accountability of the force to not being racist. And that comes back to, again, the structural, systemic outcomes of how the police operate, the service operates. So if there is a disproportionate impact, if there is, as a consequence of the force, and the other point I wanted to make is the structural one, is about the processes for disciplining for officers within the force or police within the service, and that if it has to be that there is a structure that holds individuals within the police accountable, and that is a fair process, and that it is a transparent process, but it is a process where there are consequences if there are irresponsible, if there are actions that have a detrimental impact that are not up to the standards of the service. So if there has been racist behaviour by an officer, then the system has to be able to punish that officer for that.
Thank you. To catch a copper? Any comments? Any thoughts?
I've got one.
I'm sure you have.
Can I just check, because if I got the question right, were you asking about the individual case?
Well, it was about accountability for injustice and malpractice, wasn't it? The question was about that, wasn't it? So I guess that, I guess Everything else is institutional, so it has to be like something like that. What were you going to say? Catch it up, guys. Catch it up. You had okay, because it's got the mic, let's go with that first.
Thank you very much. I think you all agree that the public actually do not trust the service.
So, some members of the public, especially.
I would say, especially. We're talking about here minority groups, we're talking about here excluded groups, we're talking about deprivation. Absolutely, they actually mistrust. And that's, I believe, everybody agrees that. What I'm saying, my question is, you don't actually to lead an organization that's not actually operating in isolation, which has connections. Yet, when you agree that there is a mistrust, you question the integrity of that organization, the values of that organization, the culture of that organization. So my question is, how far will you willing actually to make a change or take what steps will you actually to challenge the fundamental, the system actually values fundamental change? So we have a system there, structure there. So what fundamental change will you actually, yes?
Okay, thank you. In fact, I was looking for comments on the Capital Co-Operative, someone watched it, but we couldn't, I think you can incorporate that. Because I guess that's what we're all saying, when it's about challenging the thing, maybe you can bring that in. What are we going to say? So, microphone over there is Capital Co-Operative. And the other thing as well, the other thing I want to ask you about is Sarah Cruz's admission about institutional racism. Any responses to that from you guys? Just so they can hear.
You want us to respond to Sarah Cruz?
Either.
That's fine.
Catch a copper.
Catch a copper and Sarah Cruz.
Or
Okay, so I just want to feedback about language. You guys are in a leadership position. We have new officers, and as someone who teaches new officers, I can say to you, the language of force and service is significant. I have young people who feel that under a forced language, that they're going to go out there and they're going to do stuff to people. When I bring in the language of service, that starts to come down, and that responsibility starts to come in. So it's very important. I just want to make that
train
point.
police officers?
I do.
Okay.
And that's why I'm so passionate about the point.
Yeah.
So I do think in leadership positions, you've got to manage your language. Catch a copper. I thought it was absolutely brilliant because what it did is it shone a light on the complexities and the interrelationships between officers who are trying to do a good job and officers who are not trying to do a good job. And what it does for the public is it builds our confidence that there is accountability there and that Sarah Cruz is open to being challenged and apologising and putting in a strategy of how she's going to do it differently. We're not holding you as superior to us. You're human and you're going to make mistakes. What we want as a community is that you hear us and you put in a strategy that changes so that we can all move forward together. That's what we want. We want those values from us as a community.
Thank you. This, just in front of you, yeah, come in, and then bring the mic to the front.
Yeah, it was just about reflective practice.
No, not you, sorry.
Oh, right. So it was interesting, and I agree that it was a really good documentary. In terms of reflective practice, there didn't seem to be much evidence of consequence coming from that. I work in mental health services, I'm not a clinician. Sitting around in a circle talking about what you did wrong is quite ineffective. And so the documentary didn't show consequence, and that's why lots of people came away feeling that things were unresolved.
So basically they can do something, get away with it, basically.
Yeah, because it's talking. It's a bit like talking about unconscious bias, which is controversial. Does it really exist? Can we really have unconscious bias? Is an excuse for consequences not happening when people are blatantly racist or there's microaggression. So that's just something to think about. And there has to be a call to action when there's what am I saying?
So take us to yes. Thank you. So that actually ties in a little bit to the question at the back about fundamental change. So it's good to be scrutinised, open to scrutiny, but does it make any difference? Is really the question.
I just wanted to ask him a question about a point that he made.
Okay.
I just wanted you to elaborate on it.
Which one?
You said something about being black is not being a criminal, something about poverty makes you a criminal. Could you expand on that and elaborate on that, please?
Thank you. Yes, I would like to do that because I have worked with schools, and one of the questioners talked about the school to prison pipeline, which is a terrible thing, and it's absolutely not the way that youngsters should be thinking as they come out of schools. They shouldn't be finding themselves in that pipeline which leads to crime. What your prospects are in life has a direct effect on your approach to your fellow members of society. If you think that you might make something good out of your life, or if you've been given that chance and that opportunity, then that's a great thing. But an awful lot of people don't get that. And one of the things that we need to do from central government, and this is not something you can really ask of the Police and Crime Commissioner directly, is deliver programs like Sure Start, and programs like, Somerset, for instance, doesn't have a university. And the area which I was the local councillor for had the lowest social mobility in all of England and Wales, which is a terrible thing. I can see for myself, working with the schools in West Somerset, which is a deprived area on the coast, the schools to prison pipeline is a very real thing. A lot of these kids that I'm meeting are going to end up in prison because they don't have anywhere else to go. And along the way, they're going to be tempted into crime by the lure of what's described to them as easy money. We need to provide people with better things to do after they come out of school. And one of those is the hope of getting a decent job. I talked to a chap called Martin Bisp, I don't know if you've heard of him. He runs a boxing club called Empire Fighting Chance. He sort of fell into that entirely by accident. As a disabled athlete, so he wasn't a Paralympian, but he was a disabled athlete. And he ended up forming a boxing club because he found these group of young guys in East Bristol selling drugs, and he invited them in and said, "Listen, why are you doing this?" And the end result was Empire Fighting Chance, was that they ended up taking over the Empire Boxing Club and turned it into Empire Fighting Chance. This chap, Martin Bisp, is somebody that I'm going to be working with very closely if I become your Police and Crime Commissioner, because he's a world leader in violence reduction. I don't want to be mopping up the mess. I want to be looking at prevention, because it's so much cheaper to do prevention than it is to clear up afterwards. And that means giving young people a future in life.
Okay. Before you answer that, please, you can answer directly to that?
I suppose not. I wanted to say something relevant to what Benet, but you're right, you asked a very particular question. So.
That's okay. I wanted to throw those other themes topics back up. So we had life crime.
Yes.
We had school to prison pipeline. That's bringing up into it. Okay, good. And community policing, which kind of ties in a little bit. And the other question was about black young men. Is that right? Or young men? Black young men. So let's put those all in the air now and see. Did you want to add anything onto what I said?
Yes, I can add a little bit by talking slightly more about the work that happens at Empire, because actually that's they have trained psychologists in there who get young black men to talk in a situation where they wouldn't feel happy talking in a medicalised environment. You can find yourself talking to a psychologist and it doesn't feel like you're talking to a shrink. It feels like you're working out your problems, you're taking out your aggression, and you're doing something more useful than hanging around on the street corner. And at the same time, professionals are out there learning about how you got into this position and how other young black men get into this position, and we can all draw conclusions from that about giving people a better start in life.
How does that work in terms of your PCC manifesto?
Well, we're outside of my TCC manifesto. I'd like to see less crime on the streets. And if Empire Fighting Chance leads to less crime, it's doing part of my job for me.
Okay. I'll take that as an answer. Katy.
Thanks, I don't want to jump the queue. I just wanted to say something about the school to prison pipeline. I mean, I understand a bit differently from Benet. I mean, what I understand of that is the overwhelming evidence that school to prison pipeline is about school exclusion, and how entirely school exclusion contributes to a life of prolonged contact with the criminal justice system in a way that is just so wrong from a causal point of view. The young people who find themselves in this situation find themselves in that situation through a series of things we've identified now. vast majority of which have got nothing to do with them. The 2019 National Crime Agency said that 100% of young people, children involved in county lines, have been excluded from school. I mean, we just see this absolutely direct causal relationship. So I think it's got to be on the radar of the Avon and Somerset Police as much as it is anywhere else. They are doing really interesting experiments, I think. I mean, trials on this in Glasgow. They've had an 88% reduction in school exclusion, and what has followed that but a 50% reduction in youth crime. Pretty amazing. Now, these things aren't overnight things, they require resources, but I am very interested, if I were to accompany this commissioner, in doing really good horizontal planning from other police areas and other commissioners and other chief constables who are presiding over pilots, and I think this is the sort of thing that Somerset could really look to sort of begin to break down that inevitability that just is so unfair for someone as young as a 10-year-old child.
And younger.
Yeah,
And it's happening in primary schools as well.
Yeah, I mean, it does cost money to do this and to buy alternatives, but it doesn't cost anything like money it does to put people in prison. And of course, the moral imperative is overwhelming. So that's what I wanted to say specifically about that. I've got lots to say about knife crime as well.
Okay, yeah, there's community school to prison pipeline and community policing kind of fit together. So I'm also feel free to comment on knife crime and anything else you want to do. We've got about 20 minutes left. We're going to go really quick.
Yeah, so I completely agree about the school exclusions. This is a real issue, and the reason I say and younger is because I was talking to Marvin a few weeks ago, and he was talking about he'd heard about a 5-year-old being excluded from his primary school, and neither of us knew the background of that child, but we both reckoned we had a pretty high predictability around the background, and it goes back to the way that people are policed. And yes, there is absolutely the relationship to poverty and deprivation, but that does not dodge the reality that it isn't just poverty. There's an intersectional point, and there is absolutely an issue around race within poverty as well, and that has to be owned and faced up to and recognised. And it is, school exclusions is huge. It's but again, it's all the ways that the system treats people differently. The expectations, the role models that are available.
So we did a gift to the PCC. What do you have to do with that?
So and I think this, well, I don't think this is unrelated to the point around knife crime either, and actually I was involved in pulling a round table together. Yesterday we had Yvette Cooper, who's the Shadow Home Secretary, come to Bristol, which, by the way, is, I think, the 3rd highest in the country for school exclusions. So yeah, it is related to outcomes than the criminal justice system. And we brought in Desmond Brown, we brought in Martin, we brought in others who were community organisations so that they could talk through, right, what are the different things you can do? And it's joining up those levels of government, it is joining up national government with the Police and Crime Commissioner role, with the City Council role as well. You don't solve this on your own. You do solve it by working together. And it is not inevitable that we have these levels of knife crime. Other places around the world have dealt with them. But you do it by that coordinating action. You do it so you are working with schools. You're saying those points about you don't have to exclude. Find a different route to do this. And we can, as you know, I go back to the point around the Police and Crime Commissioner having a commissioning role as well. It is about commissioning jointly different interventions that can support young people having a different future. Youth services, none of us have mentioned youth services so far, but the cuts to youth services. We had some brilliant representatives of youth services in the room yesterday, but they were, they have been, I think it's a 90% cut, it's a massive cut, it's at least 70% cut to, I think it was 70% cut to youth services.
Or it's 70% increase in crime at the same time.
It's direct impact on that.
So Mark, sorry to have you answer so long. You want to talk about cash offer as well?
I think we've moved on from that. So, 3 points to make. We are doing that joined up approach with advanced reduction partnerships, run by my office, that brings together the different partners within the organisations, including the council, including youth services and education. And it is really important that we get that joined up approach, particularly on education. I absolutely and have supported them there around exclusion policy. One of the problems with advanced reduction partnerships, which every council runs, they call safer options in Bristol, for example, is that the line where the child comes onto the radar is set at exclusion. It needs to be lower, it needs to be before then, and it makes such a difference. Now, everybody doesn't want that to happen because it means hundreds more children will come onto each of those particular partnerships. But I'm determined to make that happen because it will make such a difference. Practically, I have asked the Chief Constable to look at putting mini-cops into every single primary school. Mini-cops, they're like cubs and brownies, but police version.
Like children.
Children, children who do cubs and brownies, but as police. In every single primary school, because they have an enormous effect on those children. I've also worked with 2 ministers at the moment to try and do youth empowerment, which is to bring Duke of Edinburgh's Award cadets, scouting and guiding into every single secondary school within Avon Sunset as part of the national curriculum, and ask that we pilot that here. And so the state will pay for it, and it will be part of the curriculum, so compulsory, to give people that chance to be different to everywhere else. And then the final question about, you talked about community policing in neighbourhoods. Again, when I first started with the Chief Constable, I said the most important part of the policing organisation was neighbourhood policing. And that every other part of the police supports neighbourhoods, it's not the other way around. And get that mentality and culture within the service. And so we've worked very hard with that, and I and my staff officer and a number of others have put together basically a profession of neighbourhood policing, because everybody understands that, and there'll be a promotion process within it. Those 3 things, important, the bit where it gets onto the advanced reduction partnership, the child gets onto that level is too high, it should be lower. Getting cubs and brownie equivalent mini-cops into every primary school, the cadets, Duke of Edinburgh's, and the scouts into secondary school, and then finally making sure that neighbourhoods is the white hot tip of the spear of policing service to the community.
Thank you very much. Do you want to come back on something there? Or feel free, the other person can come back on something.
Only that I think, though, that a couple of things on the neighbourhood policing. One is we have had neighbourhood policing in the past. It was much more evident and much more connected, I'm afraid, before 2010, when we did have a Labour government. And we do absolutely need to get back there. But the experience of whether people feel neighbourhood policing is happening, well, I can tell you categorically they don't. Wherever you go, be that in Bristol, in our communities in Bristol, or anywhere else in Avon and Somerset, people do not feel that they have neighbourhood policing or policing within their community as part of their community.
Thank you. And is it different by community? The people actually get that question. Yeah, sorry.
I would say no. I mean, the experiences, there are differential experiences, but no, the same. Everybody says the same thing. You don't feel it.
1 to 10.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, I would say metric is probably different feel, but metric.
So, Benet, if you want to come, so we've got these things hovering. Remember, you started the school to prison pipeline. We've got knife crime, treatment of black young men. You started that, community policing. They're the ones in the air. I don't know if you want to come back into that. Please, you come back into that. Sis had a question over there as well. Let's come. You happy to do answer those as well?
Should we do knife crime? Because we haven't really done.
Let's do knife crime.
We haven't done knife crime.
Let's do knife crime.
Great.
Does that make sense as well? So the knife crime and also how to make more equitable black young men in particular. Please show hands. Please stop to search. Thank you.
That's alarming. That's an alarming number.
Just,
no, fair enough.
Can I just add to that? So I have 2 sons, okay? My oldest son got stopped and searched, I would say, before he was 20, I would say he was stopped and searched at least 20 odd times. My youngest son, who is just turned 21, has been stopped and searched over 40 times, coming home from school in school uniform. So just to throw that out.
Which is a terrible statistic, and clearly we need to look at the effects of stop and search, and we need to work out whether or not actually it's being applied unfairly, because it doesn't look terribly good for me.
So you like this is our last one? Okay, yeah, because
so,
John, do you want to add? I'm sure you're putting quickly. Yeah.
I just want to say, I feel like I want to add something.
Okay.
The police approach to young black individuals is quite wrong at times. I feel like they view school just as the same. Someone being from areas like Eastern, Barton Hill, St. Paul's, just because I'm wearing a black tracksuit and I'm like sat inside a Audi, for example, they'll just come next to you and then look at you as the person that they're looking to get, if that makes sense. I feel like how can we change the approach to individuals, or young black individuals?
You want to say something as well?
Yeah, following up on that, as a young individual myself, once I am profiled like that, it kind of like naturally could create a different my view on the police service. What would you guys do to change how we look at police?
Feds. Feds.
well, first of all, the police need.
Sorry, one second. Let me just. Unless you're really, but is this going to change the subject?
No, it's the same.
Okay, it's the same subject. So you want subject to
Different topics.
Look, when it comes to knife crime, gang violence, county lanes, look, this is the community that is paying the price. Look, I don't hear anything used from the candidates. I want from them to come up with innovative or creative ideas. Can you convince us that when you become the crime commissioner, that you're going to do something different from what we are hearing is last 20 years, last 40 years is the same. What are you going different? What are you going to do a different?
Thank you. Which kind of relates to the question about as well, which was about that something radical, something different. So knife crime, treatment of black young men, how are you going to do something radically different? Well, it's really about radical impact, isn't it? You can do something different if it has a worse impact, if it has a better impact. I think it's a radical different that has impact.
I can promise you, if I had the answer, if I had the silver bullet, as it were in my back pocket, I would have fired it some time ago. It's not an easy problem to fix. It's going to take hard work and a long time. The best thing I can offer is to learn from other places where it's already been tackled and tackled more successfully, and also to look very closely at what works. There's quite a lot of science in that. No, I'm going to refer you back to the expert that I was talking to earlier. I'm not afraid to bring in an expert to say, how can we do this better? I'm here to listen and learn from you guys as well. You never stop listening and you never stop learning, so we've got more listening and learning to do. Yes, I grant you it's a terrible problem, and this is where it's having the greatest effect. And the police being more visible is one of the things that makes people feel safer on the streets. And tackling the visibility problem is one of the easiest things we can sort out. If there were a few more police around, we might feel safe to walk on the streets without feeling the need to carry a knife. We've also got to work out why youngsters are carrying knives, because they feel that anybody else that they come into contact with might pull a knife on them. And actually what you're left with is a spiral of violence in which you've got people forming into gangs, and one gang attacks another gang. And you're in a situation where everybody becomes terrified of life on the streets. We've really got to make the streets feel like a safer place to be before we can tackle that problem.
Thank you. Katy or Clare? Were you going to say something?
Well, I wanted to just say something about knife crime, but do you want to hold the mic? Sorry.
Do say something.
Okay. Well, I wanted to say that, as I understand it, this is a priority for all of us, for candidates sitting here. It is an unbelievably pressing issue for Bristol. It's been brought into very sharp focus in the last few months, but these are also, chronic problems in, cities across the country. This really matters to me as an individual. It also really matters to my party, the Green Party. It was the Greens that brought the Life Crime motion to full council last year to get the City Council to commit to more attention, more resources and more collaboration on the issue. I'm a signatory to the Together for Change campaign, which is a campaign massive different stakeholders, including many of the individuals you're speaking about at the Empire Boxing Club, and many others work in providing youth services in the sorts of environments where young people are vulnerable, both in the context of being potential victims and potential perpetrators. Together for Change is just a campaign to raise awareness and get everybody talking about this and getting them to put pressure on the stakeholders and duty bearers to fund it and source it out. And I personally believe that the police have a critical role in that, but they are one of many, as we've discussed before, around the prevention, around getting behind the criminal environment in the first place. And I think this story of partnership and work with community-based actors is the absolute key to it. I would like to see security and safety be part of the conversation at the neighbourhood partnership level, where individuals are also talking about zebra crossings and traffic. We need this holistic approach to community safety that means that it's not a topic we're afraid to look at square in the eye. And that starts at the level of schools and goes through all the different ways in which communities come together. When you bring people together like that, and the police at the table as an ally, a trusted ally, not the fellow putting up the cop car next to you, either looking at you in a way that's just incredibly uncomfortable, making it worse, getting out and insisting on a stop and search, unexplained, etc. When the police are allies and communities are together, you get this high quality decision making, you get the opportunity for leadership and collaboration in civil society, and it just makes the community more accountable to itself. So that would be part of my thing. I realise that Life Crime is a special case, but I think it's, we need a public health approach, and that is how I would go about it.
Claire? Claire, Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to pick up on something that you said as well, specifically about, and it goes to Amira's point too, in terms of profiling creates a different relationship, I think was the way you put it, and you actually then, you take on a different role, expectations change, and it reinforces expectations inside the police service as well. So you've got that different thing, and you've got to break that. It's got to change. Those statistics around, just the hands that were raised in this room of your two boys' experiences, and then it's the labelling point. I was talking about labelling about 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever it was, but it's the stereotypes, the assumptions. You don't solve that with a couple of hours of training. You've got to change the culture, you've got to change the values inside the system, and you've got to have, and Katy was talking about this a little bit, you've got to have that, that change, that relationship, so that policing shouldn't be something that's done to you. Policing should be from your community and about your community, and you're part of that relationship and that decision making about, and that the police, you should be there to protect you and to serve you, not to, as I say, do to you. That it's really important that that changes. I think, again, it's been a good challenge in this meeting. Sorry, I can't see you terribly well, but the point about, and you made radically different impact being the outcome. And we know that stuff has gone on around the world. There was there's stuff that's happened in Colombia, where obviously they had drugs and the drugs gangs. And there's been stuff in New York, there's been stuff elsewhere. We have to learn. We have to learn and we have to change, and then not all of this is about police, it is the public health approach that's being talked about as well, that we pull different people together, and it's not just public agencies either, it is also kind of the voluntary and community organisations that you bring together to effect change and effect systemic change. So there does need to be a radically different impact, because this experience can't be acceptable. It can't be something we accept, and it has to be something that changes. I don't have a perfect silver bullet answer, but I know we've got to change the direction.
You're about your bullets in your own cry.
I'm sorry,
It is an incredibly complicated subject with tragic consequences. And education is at the heart of all of this. And the police and my office play an important part in that. So, from the public health approach piece that you mentioned at the beginning, the police do the enforcement bit, look at the symptoms of the issue. But they're also involved in the education piece. They bring together a group of medics, educators and the police that go into schools and give the blunt truth. It's a film and a series of workshops in order to help the young, the children, deal with it. But from my office piece, we're looking at over the horizon, getting to the causes of this. And we've talked a lot about the causes so far, and I agree with everything you're saying. But one of the things is the young are getting messages to them that make them want to carry knives. What are those messages that are making them want to carry knives? What are the means by which those messages are landing? And how can we intercept those messages and change them? That's where the education bit comes in, which is really important. And that's where offering alternative visions of hope, hence the mini-cops and the cadets line, is to give something different, to give a change, to help them and give them something to aspire to that is not their gang. But it does give that community and teamwork and joining together. So education is at the heart of solving this problem, and it's community.
Thank you very much. So it's almost 8 o'clock, we're at that time. Is it possible to do concluding, has it been fun? Let's do something concluding for each of you, hopefully with Sib's question. Could you get a 30-second answer out of Sib's question, which means you have to make it a kind of 30-second
Possibly not, because I think everything we've heard today has been more about the sorrows and the emotions that the community is feeling. What we want to aim towards is something that's a bit more aspirational. And you've mentioned how poverty can create harm. You've mentioned some of the recommendations from Des report. We've spoken about the school to prison. Now, in all of these pipelines, the diversity of the service providers is really, undiverse in terms of the service providers. You talk about Empire Fighting Chance. I can tell you about Mario, who's just 5 minutes down the road. His funding level compared to Empire Fighting Chance is minus 50%. What we talk about exclusion, Bristol's got this third highest level of exclusion. But when you look at the providers of alternative provision, they are all white. Okay. So my question to you is, Avon Somerset is the second largest procurement spender in the Southwest. Second largest. How are you going to use your spending power to encourage and get more diversity of entrepreneurs delivering services that can become the role models, that can hire the young people, and use your own finance to do that? Because if people are not joining in recruitment, maybe it's because they want to do it in a different way. And that is the different way that we feel our community can be part of it. That means when you go to the canteen, you will see mamas there providing the food. It will be a black service. That diversity within your supply chain is the first part that actually makes an inclusive force. How will we use your spending power in your manifesto, and this is a pledge, do you pledge to make procurement diversity in your manifesto in terms of diversifying your spending power? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take that as a comment. Also consider it as a concluding point. Is it in your gift, procurement?
Not directly, but having said that, we have done two pieces exactly as you just described. The Violence Reduction Partnership that my office has funded into the councils, the diversion projects, and we've been trying to be as diverse as possible in those diversion projects. That's the first thing. And the second thing is the third prosecution that's being worked on now, again, has gone through a system where we've tried to be as diverse as possible. Those tenders are now.
Any concluding points for your overall comments?
Well, the most important thing of, I suspect all of us, focus is around knife crime. That's for the manifesto. That, right now, is the biggest issue we need to deal with. Where the drugs trade feeds it, we need to work together with the community to solve that.
What's your manifesto called? Where can people find it?
It's called Making It Safer.
Okay. And it's online somewhere.
It is. Let me bring it up.
Thank you.
Show you. Oh, it's here. Already here.
Ah.
There we are.
Okay.
My plan to make it
So
safer.
if you want to go into detail, I presume each has a manifesto, we'll find out. So Claire, concluding points and how can you deal with procurement in a way that feels more diversity?
Okay, I'm just going to pick up on one quick point. You said alternative education is white provided or whatever, but actually I was talking to Desmond Brown. We keep mentioning people on this platform, but he was
The
saying...
only person you've mentioned is Desmond.
But he was saying that actually young people, the first time they see a black teacher is in that alternative education, not in mainstream education. So that kind of role model point is a really important thing to keep in mind.
You mean white-led organisations?
But I just wanted to, it's the led organisations, and that's something I wanted to pick up on as well, because you do have, kind of the living wage foundation around procurement, and that you do procurement through living wage. You've just prompted an idea that maybe there should be some kind of, similar kite mark, benchmark, whatever, around procurement that is about procuring from organisations that are black-led, specifically black-led or black and minoritized-led organisations, that there might be a process that could be a change that could be effected. But it's certainly important in terms of, and again, this is about the procurement and the delivery, and I know I'm taking more than 30 seconds, but it's a really important point. In the commissioning of services, quite often you get the commissioning of services done in, organisations do it in London, and then you lose the funding because they take a cut from the funding to the local organisations. You've got to change that funding model so it is long-term, it's predictable. It is to more diverse organisations in the city, but they have secure longer-term funding to deliver that change, and that really matters when you're looking at that procurement point.
5 second concluding points of everything.
Oh God, where do we start?
A short version. Concluding points.
Look, it is, I think it's got to be about that engagement. It's got to, this evening has been a really good event, and thank you for putting it on, because there's a lot of ideas that have come to us, as well as us giving ideas, and I think that would be my primary concluding point, is that I would want to continue to listen. I would intend to continue to listen and bring that innovative practice in.
Thank you very much. We've got you through the lesson around language and what you said about that. So you should guess a good word.
Can I try and put this as briefly as possible?
Yes, please. So you've got 2 points if you want it, procurement and
no, absolutely. We're working in the right direction when the makeup of the police reflects the makeup of the community that they serve. And the makeup of the procurement system reflects the makeup of the community that it serves as well. We're aiming for that equilibrium. Perhaps sometime after we've reached that stage, we will no longer be an institutionally racist force. I hope to see that day coming in the not too distant future. But otherwise, thank you for coming along tonight. We haven't stopped listening, and I haven't stopped learning. It's a two-way process. Thank you very much for your input.
Katy, thank you. Katy.
Yeah, just to say thanks so much. This has been a really lively and informative evening. Brilliantly fortunate by Simpson, his question. I would totally rise to that challenge about procurement. I actually think it's one of quite a few other challenges we need to be given around the bigger sort of vortex that is the police and its impact. So yes, I would rise to that challenge as Commissioner, but I also think you're making such a good point when you say, let's think aspirationally for a moment, let's think about the positives here. I love what Black Southwest Network does. I love its particular philosophy, the sort of philosophy of communion and collaboration, this sort of story of partnership at the key. I love the idea that the provision of advice and mentorship, leadership and networking and opportunity is the other side of this coin. This is, the police have a part to play in all of that, and I think this is, a huge part of what will help black and minoritized communities and the police develop a better relationship, get to know each other better. I want the police to mean the same thing for everybody, you know, not to mean one thing for a certain group of people who are delighted to see more police on the street because that's just great protection from their point of view, and to mean something completely different for other members of this region in Bristol. And by the way, just to quickly say, we mustn't forget about rural communities either, because the sort of diversity makeup there is far less, you know, good. It's far more, the minorities are far more the minority, and I'm pretty sure rural police, you know, if we're seeing problems here, it's worse than that.
Yeah. So. Right, thank you thank you very much. Yeah, everybody good? Everybody good? Very good. Well, can we please thank Katy but I want to thank Sandra and Jeff and Simon for the setup, because I didn't answer it, I'll be the best of the briefing talk. Security, you have been needed tonight, it's great you're here, thank you very much. And thank you all very much for taking the time to come out and challenging our candidates. Good luck, 2nd of May?
Correct.
2nd of May is election day, so
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday. Best of luck in your campaigns, and thank you all very much for making it a very